American Football Stories is brought to you by Coach Paint. Coach Paint is a great tool that allows us to add graphics to player highlight clips similar to the graphics you see on TV. Coach Paint offers the ability to clearly telestrate video while increasing retention of information in a shorter amount of time. Up your game with Coach Paint today.
What time is it? Game time! It's gonna be special. They gonna talk about this forever.
Welcome to American Football Stories.
Puts his head down, crashes and spins, and dives. Touchdown!
Bringing together the many perspectives that make up college football in the NFL.
Football is one of the greatest sports ever invented.
From players and coaches.
Believe, baby, believe, baby.
Hey, we playing to win right here, fellas.
To the front office and scouts.
The public is finally beginning to catch up, but they don't even know half the truth.
Let's get the world. Let's get it.
Your hosts, Robert Parker and Nick Knudsen, bring you American Football Stories.
Welcome to the American Football Stories podcast brought to you by Coach Paint. Today is May 2nd, 2021. I'm your host, Nick Knudsen, joined by my co-host, Robert Parker, and we are joined by our guest, Jeremy Kohlman from the Extra Point Podcast, here with us to break down the NFC West draft grades and analysis for each and every pick and grades for every team. So we're going to start with the Arizona Cardinals, fellas. They start with Zaven Collins in round one, athletic linebacker, a little bit of raw, undeveloped a bit, but slipped through the cracks in the recruiting process, ends up at Tulsa having a great career at Tulsa, comes out with that 16 pick. They grab Rondell Moore in round two. More athleticism there in the for the receiving core. This is a guy that absolutely could be a star in this league if things go right and he stays healthy. He's got that potential. Marco Wilson in round four. Little surprised with this. Maybe I'm a Gator that's just still a little scarred from the shoe throwing incident. But he tested off the charts and is super athletic corner and absolutely belongs in the NFL. So round four might be a little high for that pick, but good pick overall. Like I think he belongs in the league overall. Victor, edge rusher out of Duke. Victor Dumake. I even wrote it down how to pronounce it. Dumakeji from Duke. Sorry, Victor. Tay Gowan out of UCF in the 6th round. Also James Wiggins from Cincinnati in the 7th, and Michael Manette out of Penn State, the center, in the 7th round as well. Guys, overall, this roster, they signed a lot of free agents. They're kind of building up, gearing up for a run. They think they're gearing up for a run here. I like the Collins combo when you think of Isaiah Simmons on that defense too. You just get some freaky athletic dudes, and Moore just needs to come in and fit in. He's got Hopkins, he's got AJ Green, and just he gets to be that slot guy. I love the fit there. Tay Gowan, player out of UCF, also a guy I got my eye on, and him and Wilson could be a pretty solid combo in this backfield. Overall, in the defensive backfield, overall though, I think it's definitely a risky class top to bottom. You could see if Moore gets injured, if Collins doesn't live up to it, he doesn't develop, Wilson doesn't develop. I mean, really, this class could be a disaster too. You see the potential, but it just feels like every pick is like risk. And you're going to miss on some of these. So for that reason, I'm going to give the Cardinals, I'm going to give this class a C- because there's not one guy that I'm ready to hang my hat on and say, absolutely guarantee this guy's going to be this player in 5 years from now. A lot of potential, a lot of good players, but just the lack of a guarantee that hurts. So I'm gonna go a C- on this class overall.
Yeah, I'm kind of in your line of thinking. I really loved Zaven Collins in the Rondell Moore pick. I think both of those could be just absolute home runs and really make them dangerous. I even like the Marco Wilson pick, even though he throws shoes. Who throws a shoe, honestly? But I mean, honestly, I'm not going to let one career dumb move define his whole outlook. You know, he's a very good football player. Minus he had one lapse in judgment, which screwed Florida big time. You know,
there's football players who do a lot worse things that play in the NFL.
Yeah, I was about to say, if we're talking about shoe throwers or some of the other stuff,
most of them don't appear. Yeah, most of them don't cost your team a national title on live television on ESPN. That's the only difference.
Yeah, Victor, I'm not going to repeat his last name. You said it once, JK or something.
Yep, nailed it.
Wow, that's actually pretty good. I liked him coming out. He's kind of like it's weird. He's got a big body, but then like he's more athletic than his big body. It's weird. Because he's like 6'3", 260, and it's almost like he's too big. I like his game though. I do. I think he'd benefit though from like losing like a solid 10 pounds and like focus more on because he's strong, but I just more focus on like trying to get a little bit quicker. If he does that, I think he could end up being a solid player. The player he kind of reminds me of is a less refined Lamar Woodley coming out of Michigan. You know, Lamar Woodley kind of was more of a dominant pass rusher at Michigan, more talented too, but just I kind of see him in that 3-4 outside linebacker scheme they like to run. Tay Gowan, I have some questions about Tay Gowan. He tested well. He's not as great of a football player, if you ask me. I think he's a safety. I don't know if he's a corner. Just his lack of time speed kind of worries me there. I like James Wiggins. He's more of that football player we were just talking about. Tested pretty well, but his instincts are actually there. You know, his counterpart, Derek Forrest, tested off the charts, but the instincts weren't there. So they kind of complemented each other well at Cincinnati. But Wiggins is a nice piece there, especially since they like to kind of bring up the strong safety and play him, you know, especially if he's backing up, you know, like a Buda Baker or something like that. Don't understand the Michael Manet pick. I just don't think there's a whole lot there to work with. But, you know, that's nitpicking. But
what you got on the grade?
But I'm with you. You know, I've got a very solid C. Because there's a lot of potential there, but then there's a lot of what ifs.
Yeah,
a lot of what ifs.
Can go either way. Rob, what do you see? Hey, you're on mute, Rob.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a C plus, and the reason why is because you know they did get Rodney Hudson, the center from the Raiders. So we're factoring trades. I'm gonna throw that in there.
Oh, one of their trades was Hudson.
Yep. So. But with that being said, I'm right there with you guys. This could be a risky draft. I mean, the potential is there, especially with Zaven Collins in the first round at linebacker. I think he can kind of shape up and have like an Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks type of career at his peak. You know, so the ceiling is there for him. And then Rondale Moore, to get Rondale Moore to put, you know, with AJ Green, you know, DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray, I think that's a great piece. And I think Cliff Kingsbury is going to use them as such. So I think he can kind of come in and play right away. But the Marco Wilson pick, don't get me wrong. I really think Marco Wilson is deserving of a draft pick. However, when you trade up to get him, that's the only thing that concerns me. And it really, like we've seen, being a Florida guy, I've seen Marco Wilson at his best, and his best was before the Kentucky injury where he tore his ACL. That was Marco Wilson at his best. I know he tested off the charts really, really well at his pro day, but you know, later on in his career, he was just too up and down and too inconsistent to have a pick to have someone to trade up for him. And Tay Gowan, he's going to be a developmental guy, but I'm right there with you, Jeremy. I think he's more of a safety than a corner. He's a JUCO guy coming over from the JUCO ranks to the UCF. Tall, rangy, can flip his hips and run, but not as fluid. So you don't really want him to be on your number one receiver, especially the true number ones, because he definitely will get beat. But at the end of the day, I think he can play off-man zone coverage if you want to keep him at corner. But I think his true position is at safety. So I really think this draft class is pretty risky. But if all the picks hit, I think it can be really good potential. But I'm going to give it a C+ for now.
Right. Yeah, and it's just more – it's potential is the word. We're going like all of them are on potential, basically more than productivity. You like to see a little bit of a mix. in there. Rams, LA Rams didn't pick until the second round, thanks to the Jalen Ramsey trade to Jacksonville. Jacksonville picked Travis Etienne with the Rams' first round pick. The Rams pick at number 57. They take Tutu Atwell, a wide receiver from Louisville, to give Stafford another weapon there in the receiving game. Ernest Jones, linebacker from South Carolina, in round 3. 3 picks in round 4. Bobby Brown, defensive tackle out of Texas A&M. Robert Rochelle, a corner out of Central Arkansas, and Jacob Harris, wide receiver out of UCF. In the 5th round, they went Ernest Brown the 4th, the edge rusher out of Northwestern. And in the 7th round, Jake Funk, running back out of Maryland. I think I really think this class is a lot of I'm not seeing it with this class. I like Atwell. I think Atwell's a good player. I think Brown could be a solid player, but I think outside of that, it's a lot of reaches in my mind. A lot of reaches here. Ernest Jones also a pretty good football player, but again, what's that top end? If I asked you who the best pick in this class was, like, does Tutu really stand out to you? Like, I mean, it's really kind of a bunch of meh on paper here for me. So for that reason, and the difference between the Cardinals class, I actually liked some of those Cardinals players. I like the risk. It's just you went all risk for the whole thing. That's why I downgraded the picks with them. I'm going to give this class, I'm a little harsh here. I'm going to give this one a D+, guys. I'm not seeing it with this class. Help me out.
I don't know if I'd be that harsh. I'll go through the players first. Tutu Atwell, I mean, he's your slot extraordinaire, just kind of mismatch all over the field, run after the catch guy. You know, they kind of need someone like that. I like the player. I don't really love the pick. Ernest Jones out of South Carolina. I felt like that was early. You know, good player. I do think his best football's in front of him, so maybe I'm being a little harsh. And then my favorite pick of the whole draft is Bobby Brown III. I think he could be absolute terror in the NFL, in all honesty. He just needs to run with a more consistent motor because I mean, he can stop the run, but he's slippery for a guy who's 6'4", 315, 20 pounds, you know, for a pass rusher. Robert Rochelle's another nice pick out of Central Arkansas. Tested really well, flips his hips really well. I think he could be a really good corner, actually. Another steal of this draft. I think Jacob Harris, Central Florida, will be a nice player too. I actually think he'll be more of a tight end, just because of his size.
He's definitely a hybrid player.
Right. He's one of those type of guys. Didn't really see what Ernest Brown brings to the table. I never really saw him make much of an impact at Northwestern, so I don't really know what they want to do here. You know, half of me thinks they want to bulk him up another 20 pounds and play him at D tackle. Because I remember Ernest Brown coming out of high school. He's a guy I thought Indiana could recruit out of Texas, you know, because he ended up going to Northwestern. But I just didn't see it there. Jake Funk tested really well for Maryland. I think that's what got him drafted. You know, he ran a 4.4, posted really good short shuttle numbers. I think he's just one of those, like, really good football players again that's going to find a way to be on a roster. Ben Skoranek out of Notre Dame. I'm not very high on him. He's 6'3", 200 some pounds, runs like a 4.6, 4.7, nothing super fast. So I think he ends up being like one of those move tight end type deals. And then honestly, Chris Garrett out of Concordia St. Paul, he's a guy I briefly looked into. He's a pass rusher at a small school, but really needs to put on some mass if he's going to stick around at the next level. You know, he's a very good pass rusher for at that level of football, but for kind of him to have that next level impact, he's going to need to put on more weight. So grade overall, C-. I'm not going to totally condemn this class because I do like a few players out of it.
You just named 2 guys that I didn't. I did not read those names off. I'm sorry. I misreading those dates. For the record, folks, we're about on like hour 6 of recording all of these, and like my brain's a little broken. Ben Skoranek and Chris Garrett. I did not even list those. That's kind of embarrassing. So thank you for covering on that, Jeremy, but
I'm just reading out my list.
I'm sticking with my grade. I'm not changing it. C- for you, D+ for me. Rob, what do you think about the Rams?
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. I'm gonna give it a C- as well. I did not like this draft at all for the Los Angeles Rams.
Cool house though, right?
I know Tutu Atwell. He's explosive. He's a great change of pace for Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. So Matthew Stafford. That's definitely a deep threat that Matthew Stafford can use. We know Matthew Stafford likes to gunsling and throw the ball deep. So I really like the Tutu Atwell pick because it kind of seems like that offense hasn't been the same since Brandon Cooks has departed, and I think he can kind of come in and play that Brandon Cooks role. Just taking the top off the defense, working them in the screen game, the in around, the jet sweeps. We know Sean McVay loves doing the jet sweeps, but recently we've been seeing Sean McVay work the jet sweeps with Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, who are explosive, but not as explosive as Tutu Atwell. So I definitely understand this pick in regards with the Sean McVay system. But honestly, I think, Bobby Brown III could be their best draft pick, in my opinion. I think, you pair him with Aaron Donald. So a big guy, Aaron Donald gets double team and triple team sometimes. So if that's going to be the case, and if Bobby Brown can make that next step, I think he's going to be a handful for teams moving forward. But outside of those two players, I just don't understand the picks. It was no value there for me. It was better players on the board at the time that they picked these guys. So I'm just going to give it a C-. Like I don't like this draft at all. But when you give up first round picks and you get Jalen Ramsey, I guess that's worth it.
Absolutely. So the Rams, good thoughts overall, Robert. Rams, not real. None of us are really feeling their draft. Let's go to the 49ers. Pick 3 they traded up to. They end up taking QB Trey Lance out of North Dakota State. I was a little surprised. You heard all the Mac Jones talk, which also surprised me. I thought this was for sure Justin Fields, and I was really stubborn about it, and I thought it was going to happen. But you heard the last day they were deciding between Lance and Jones. They ended up going Lance, and I was surprised because this guy, he's a great prospect, but you trade up like that to go get him. Felt like you didn't have to trade that high for that. However, I love the plan. They're keeping Jimmy Garoppolo. They're letting this guy develop. Lance gets a shot. This is a great situation for him to go into. And oh, by the way, they're going to continue to build the football team on the rest of the draft here with Aaron Banks from Notre Dame, the guard, solid second-round pick. They use multiple third-round selections to take running back Trey Sermon out of Ohio State, the Oklahoma transfer, Ambry Thomas, cornerback from Michigan, good athlete there. Tackle Jalen Moore out of Western Michigan. Lenore, the corner out of Oregon in the 5th round, along with the safety Talanoa Hafunga out of USC in the 5th round. And for 6th round pick, you got Elijah Mitchell, the running back out of Louisiana, who was a really solid prospect coming out for the Raging Cajuns. So you got 2 really solid running backs in this class. And then you get some help across the board, really. I just think it's a really solid draft for San Francisco that address a lot of needs. And I like the plan with Trey Lance is my key. I don't know if Lance is the guy, but the fact that you're not going to throw him in the fire and you're going to let him develop under Jimmy G, great plan. Great plan. And I think Shanahan and Lynch deserve a little trust because they've earned it. And they got a good football team out there in San Francisco. And if Jimmy G gets hurt, you got some insurance this year. So all around good plan. I can live with the Lance pick. I'm going to give the Niners a B+ on their draft overall.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a B- more. Trey Lance scares me. He really does. I understand he has some tools. I question his overall arm talent coming from the level of competition he came from. In all honesty, I really have some question marks there. I do think he's a very good athlete. I do think he can do some things that are really well, that fit really well with what, Kyle Shanahan likes to do on offense. I think he's a good athlete for what they want there with all the play action run fakes. And, the run is still, the predominant weapon there for them. So lot to move up for him. with those major question marks is why my grade is significantly down. Thought it was a little early for Aaron Banks, but he's a solid guard. And if he fits their offensive line system, I don't mind that. Kind of the same thing I said with the Alex Leatherwood pick for the Raiders. Different players fit different schemes better. So I'm not going to crucify him on an offensive lineman who fits their system. Surprised Trey Sermon fell this far. I felt like he was a bell cow back in this draft class. I know he's not the fastest, but he does a lot of little things great that, made him really a phenomenal player at Ohio State this year. I mean, he carried that team at times with how he played. And then Ambry Thomas, a kid who, if I remember correctly, opted out. I don't think he played this year. I don't have much of an opinion on him because I don't remember watching a lot of his film, but I didn't come away like super impressed, but he's got some tools to work with. Solid athlete who can turn and go. I think Jalen Moore could end up being a real steal. He's got some really nice, like, short area quickness that's going to really suit him to play guard. And even on an outside chance, I think he could play some left tackle, but he's a guy who could play all over the line. Really nice utility lineman find here in round 5. Diamodadore Lenore. He was an okay corner for Oregon. Nothing really jumps off the tape. Just a solid player. Talafanoa Hufanga, I love that kid. I think he's going to play more linebacker than safety, just because even though they play a 3-4, I think he's going to be that more nickel linebacker type of guy because he makes all of his plays in the box. You don't really see him drop and make a ton of plays backpedaling. And then Elijah Mitchell, talk about a home run pick in the last round. I mean, this kid ran a 4.3 at his pro day. I think it was like a 4.38. And then honestly, I mean, I noticed him last year because the Steelers drafted Kevin Dodson out of Louisiana, sorry, excuse me. I mean, a lot of the holes this guy was running behind were, Kevin Dotson led holes. And, there was another guy that got Robert Hunt, that got drafted last year by the Dolphins, I believe. I mean, he had days to run by, in that league.
Well, he ran well this year too, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he ran well this year too. I mean, so that's just another great pick because it adds 2 running backs to a team that, I mean, they rotate running backs like crazy. It drives fantasy owners nuts, but it works for their offensive system. So, Raheem Mostert owners, beware. I'm going to give it a solid B-. B- is what I think. All
right, Rob, what do you got for San Francisco?
Yeah, I'm not going to be as generous. I'm going to give it a C+. I did not like this draft at all. But once again, this whole draft harps on Trey Lance. If he's going to be your quarterback of the future after Jimmy G leaves or, gets traded or whatever, and he pans out, then that's going to be the value within this draft. Trey Sermon, I think that was a good pick. Just like you said, Jeremy, 49ers, they rotate their running backs. And, by them rotating their running backs, that will help Trey Sermon because, he's been nicked up throughout his career. So that'll keep the tread on the tires down a little bit low by the rotation of the running back. So I think that was a great value pick for San Francisco and Trey Sermon. But outside of that, Hufanga was the steal of their draft. If you ask me, I think he's just a playmaker. He has a knack to get to the ball, whether, there's deflecting passes or coming up in the box and being that extra linebacker. But overall, I really didn't like this draft class for San Francisco, but it all harps on Trey Lance. And if Trey Lance can be that franchise quarterback, then, this is be a good draft class. But if not, then I really don't like it, especially with other people there available that you could have drafted in those positions on the offensive line in the secondary. So, but, this 49ers team doesn't need much. They're right there in the mix and the thick of things as far as competing for a Super Bowl. So they were competitive with all the injuries that they had last year. So they're getting all those guys back. So they're right there. So they really didn't need much. And that's why you can make a move for Trey Lance to have him sit behind Jimmy Garoppolo. Hopefully this year Jimmy Garoppolo can have a full year. But if not, then Trey Lance is going to be able to – he's going to be thrown in the fire. But you don't want to see that. But I'm going to give it a C+.
All right. And last, with the least amount of picks, the Seattle Seahawks, with 3 total picks of the draft. But, fellas, if we want to talk about factoring in the trades, I believe they acquired Gabe Jackson with a 5th-round pick from the Raiders. They their 1st-round pick went to the Jets for Jamal Adams. So this is something where if you factor in Jamal Adams and Gabe Jackson as impact players in this draft class, that automatically bumps them up to at least a C- for me. But I don't know if I get beyond that because Dwayne Eskridge is a good prospect. I like him out of Western Michigan. He's a guy that stirred up a lot of chatter as a prospect. I believe he switched from corner at some point in his career. He switched from defense, Jeremy?
If it was very early in his career, though, because Dwayne Eskridge is an Indiana kid.
I thought he had a position switch at some point before.
He might have gone there as a corner, but he switched to wide receiver pretty quickly because they saw how fast he ran, and they're like, "There's no way you're staying on defense."
Right, and that's what he's known for, his elite speed. And it sounds like the Seahawks knew they wanted him out the gate. They got the guy they wanted with the Trey Brown. Like his game out of Oklahoma, and Stone Forsythe, big tackle out of Florida at 6'8", but good player. You know he's gonna get a shot with his size, but he definitely he can use. He had a really solid senior season at Florida. I don't have a lot of complaints last year, but he took a while to develop, and I think the same thing could happen in the NFL. Definitely worth a shot in the 6th round. So if we factor in Jackson and Adams into this class, I think I could bump it up to a C, but I just I really don't love the Seahawks philosophy here of just not having any draft picks. They need to figure out how to find players without spending so many draft picks. This is going to catch up to them at some point. This is why you got Russell Wilson out there complaining, I don't have an offensive line, and your only solution is you bring in Stone Forsythe, but you brought in Gabe Jackson as well, I guess. So I'll give that. So I'll call it a straight C.
Yeah. When you figure in the fact that you have Jamal Adams, who's a Pro Bowl strong safety in this league and makes a ton of plays around the line of scrimmage, Gabe Jackson, who's going to be able to come over and improve that run game right away, over what Seattle's been trotting out there. I'm a little inclined more to give him a B-, actually. I'm a big believer in Dwayne Eskridge. I think he's very Tyler Lockett-esque. He's not quite as athletic or not quite as fast, but he can be that type of player that's just really hard to cover. Trey Brown's a nice find out of Oklahoma. There's varying different grades on corners because of scheme fit and all that. Seattle likes guys who can play the boundary, play man and run with. That he can do that. But honestly, I think you're selling Stone Forsythe way too short. He was the best pure pass protecting left tackle in this entire draft, if you ask me. He only gave up a half a sack his entire career at Florida. His entire career. And he's been starting for almost 3 years. His big knock is he has got to figure out how to run block. That's his biggest thing is he's just not a run blocker.
Jeremy, he missed a pivotal block in the Texas A&M game this year that resulted in a fumble that caused the Gators to lose that game on the last drive. But he did improve. You're right. Maybe I'm selling him short in the pass protection department.
But yeah, but he can come in and probably start at left tackle. He's that ready in pass protection. He just doesn't inspire you in the run game. That's where you're going to have to light a fire underneath him. He's going to have to work at it because he's naturally 6'8". It's going to be tough to block some of these guys that are a lot shorter. That's just how it is when you're that tall, but you've got to learn how to do it if you want to stick around. But at worst, I think he can be a left tackle going forward. I don't think he's, unathletic or anything. It's just he's got to want to and he's got to work at it. And with all of that being said, if you can come out of this thinking you get Gabe Jackson, you get Jamal Adams, you potentially get a left tackle of the future, you get a decent corner for your rotation, you get a nice third or fourth receiver. I mean, that's why I'm giving it a B-. I understand they have a lot of other needs, but with so little that they had, I feel like they did a pretty nice job, even with 3 picks.
What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Jeremy. I wouldn't go so far as putting Stone Forsythe at left tackle, maybe right tackle, in my opinion. But I think you're right. When it comes to the run block, and he's a little soft, he's gonna have to, get a little angry, because with his size, you just want to see him maul people and just finish at the point of attack, and that's something that he doesn't do. But he loves to pass protect, and he does it very well because he's a big guy. He's big, rangy. He has arms. He has size. So it's kind of hard to get around him on a speed rush. But one thing that you kind of want to see him do is just kind of like, take guys to the ground and just, pancake them, play in, play out. And in Seattle, they did a good job of getting, corner help because, they lost Quentin Dunbar and Shaquille Griffin in the offseason. So that was a good need pick that they got. But the Dwayne Eskridge pick, I really didn't see why would you go with Dwayne Eskridge when you drafted Freddie Swain late in last year's draft to kind of pair up with, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. And then you also signed Tamron Terry as an undrafted free agent. So I think you could have just left that wide receiver room a little long. And I know you have Gabe Jackson coming over. I just wish they would have invested an extra pick into the offensive lineman so they can have a rotational developmental piece moving forward to protect Russell Wilson. That was pretty much.
Yeah, Eskridge kind of seems like it was a little bit like too much of a want over a need. I'll give you that, especially when they have questions on the defensive line. Jerron Reed left. They don't have a whole lot at D tackle, D end. So
and linebacker. We know
right,
and what's his name is getting a little bit older.
Bobby
Wagner. So that would have been a great positional need, but they went wide receiver, which kind of baffled me a little bit. So with that being said, I give it a C+, even with Gabe Jackson and Jamal Adams coming over.
Yeah, that definitely seems like a little bit of a luxury pick with Dwayne Eskridge, but I think he'll be a good player. I also think he's a little different than Freddie Swain too. Freddie Swain is more of a straight line guy, as to where I think Eskridge has a lot more wiggle to his game.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, when you say that, it does scream luxury pick. It does.
Well, that's the NFC West, and we've now covered the entire NFL, fellas. We got draft grades on every team. Not too crazy about the NFC West in general from what we're seeing on the grades, but hey, guys, this was a blast doing draft coverage with you throughout the whole weekend and everything, and we'll take a little pause after this, we'll catch our breath a little bit, and we'll be back with more American Football Stories podcast in a couple of weeks here. Jeremy, thank you so much for your time today. It's a big investment. You go enjoy your Jimmy John subs, man. And Rob.
well, thank you for having me on. I always love coming on talking football. So
absolutely, dude. Absolutely. Anytime. And then Rob, you go get something to eat too. I know I'll do the same, but fellas, it was a lot of fun. Everybody, I'm going to send you out with a word from our sponsor, CoachPaint.
American Football Stories is brought to you by CoachPaint. CoachPaint is a great tool that allows us to add graphics to player highlight clips similar to the graphics you see on TV. CoachPaint offers the ability to clearly tell a straight video while increasing retention of information in a shorter amount of time. Up your game with CoachPaint today.
Thank you for listening to American Football Stories podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, American Football Stories. We are working to grow our network on YouTube and we'd love to have you subscribe. You can find us also on Apple Podcasts, on Twitter, at American FB Story, and on our website, AmericanFootballStories.com. I am Robert Parker. My co-host is Nick Knudsen. This has been another episode of American Football Stories.